The Home Office is to review an investigation it carried out last year into claims of sex abuse by politicians in the 1980s. It found no record of specific allegations of abuse by prominent public figures.
But it's emerged that more than 100 official files had gone missing. A senior legal figure is to be appointed to analyse all the papers and assess the 2013 report.
Let's talk to Keith Vaz. He's the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. He joins us now live from London. Mr Vaz, good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for getting up early to speak to us this morning. A review into a review will inevitably make people somewhat concerned that the initial review perhaps wasn't as thorough as it should have been, and it was a bit of a cover-up.
Well, good morning. First of all, let me say that I welcome both the tone and the content of the letter from Mark Sedwell to myself and the committee. I think it's the right thing to do to have appointed someone from outside Whitehall, not a civil servant, but someone with no connection to these matters, to look again at what was decided last year. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't know about all this information a year ago when the initial review was being conducted. And of course, it's a big concern that 114 files, which is a specific number, have gone missing, have been destroyed, are no longer in existence. But I think the tone and the content of Mr Sedwell's letter to the committee is very important, because it shows that the government is taking this matter extremely seriously. And we will want to pose further questions, of course, because there's a lot of information that we didn't know was in existence that he's given us in this letter. But also, I think that the government and Mr Sedwell should work with Parliament in fashioning a set of terms of reference that will satisfy all those who are dissatisfied with the way in which matters have been progressed so far. So I think it's an important step which we welcome.
If you can answer this as honestly as you possibly can, it probably is a very short answer. You've been at Westminster a long time. You've been an MP for more than a quarter of a century. Do you, having heard whatever you've heard over the years, rumblings around the Palace of Westminster, do you suspect that things may have been covered up in the past?
I think we can only know once somebody who is not connected to Westminster looks at this matter. And it's important, therefore, that we get the identity of whoever is going to do the review, and important that Mr Sedwell and the Home Office work with the Select Committee and with Parliament more generally to get a terms of reference. We shouldn't be involved. Parliament should not be involved in conducting this inquiry, which of course contains a lot of information that could well end up outside our sphere of knowledge or influence. I think what's been done by individual MPs, including Tom Watson, who began this process last year, Simon Danczuk, who gave evidence to our committee this week, all this is extremely important. But at the end of the day, this has really got to be done from outside Whitehall and Westminster with an independent figure, and we need the name of that figure, and we need terms of reference, we need a timetable, so this is done as quickly as possible, simply because these are events that occurred over, decades ago. So we need to just get on with it, and someone needs to be appointed to look at it.
But fine, I understand all of that, but you'll get the point I was driving at. You've been around Westminster for a long time. Are these rumours, whispers, whatever, things that you have heard that have been widespread in the talk around the Palace of Westminster? Because if there was something of that scale that has been covered up, surely there would have been whisperings about it.
Well, there's whispers about anything at Westminster. That is, I'm afraid, the nature of politics. There's always whispering and innuendos about absolutely anything. But the point is, let's deal with facts, shall we? And let us deal with someone outside Whitehall and Westminster who can get on and do a thorough inquiry. I mean, losing 114 files, for example, is the loss of files on an industrial scale. You mentioned the number of years I've been a Member of Parliament. Well, we know about individual cases of lost passports and lost files, so it's not a surprise that the Home Office has lost files. What is a huge surprise is that it's 114 files, out of what appears to be 527, which contain material that was relevant. So that's a loss of files on an industrial scale. And before we jump to conclusions and we rely on innuendo, let us follow a process in all this. But let's get that process done quickly. The Home Secretary is due to appear before us in just 10 days' time. So far, she's been slightly missing from the public statements of this. This has all come, it appears, from Downing Street and from Mr. Sedwell. So I hope by the time she appears with us, before us next week, in a week's time, I hope that we'll be able to get the answers that we seek from her. But this is obviously not something that's going to go away, and that's why the importance is to follow the process, and we welcome the decision taken by Mr. Sedwell. It's the right decision. Let's get on with it, get the person appointed and get some terms of reference and make sure that no other files go missing. We now need to preserve what is there so that Parliament and the public are not told in subsequent letters that more files have gone missing. So I think the key thing is preserving this evidence.
Okay,
We've
Mr.
been
Vaz.
here before. We were here.
All right,
We were
thank
here
you.
in the past over
yeah, no,
phone
sure.
hacking. It's
We
important
appreciate
that
your time.
come to
I'm sorry
quick
we have run out of
conclusions.
time now, but we are grateful for your input. Keith Vaz, the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee.